Hey there, and welcome to This Explainer. Today we are going to completely dismantle how you think about studying. I mean it. We're going to break down the most popular study methods, totally toss out the useless ones that are honestly secretly draining your time, and reveal the evidence-based S-tier techniques you should actually be using to master complex information. If you've ever felt that absolute head-against-the-wall frustration of studying for hours but retaining almost nothing, well, you are in the exact right place, because we are going to fix that today.
Okay, real quick, here is our agenda for today. We're breaking this down into 4 sections. Section 1 explores the illusion of learning. Then, we'll look at active recall, the secret to schema building, and finally, those ultimate S-tier study techniques.
Let's jump right in. Section 1, the illusion of learning, or why easy methods absolutely waste your time. So there are 2 wildly popular techniques that you probably use every single day, highlighting and rereading. And according to decades, literally decades of cognitive research, they belong strictly in the F tier. No joke, if you just throw away your highlighter right now, you might automatically become a better, way more efficient learner. Why? Well, because highlighting merely draws your visual attention to a page without actually forcing your brain to process what it means. And rereading, that simply exposes you to the exact same text over and over again. They only offer an illusion of familiarity, which kind of tricks your brain into feeling like it knows the material, while actually being a massive waste of time.
These useless techniques are popular for one simple reason. They're incredibly easy. I get it, we're human. We love doing things that require very little effort. But passive familiarity creates this false sense of knowledge without demanding much from us. Here's the thing though. Biological learning requires active effort. It requires strain. Learning is entirely invisible, right? It happens inside the brain, much like lifting weights at the gym to build muscle. If you aren't feeling that mental resistance, you aren't actually building durable, high-quality memory.
Moving on to Section 2, active recall and doctors, doing the heavy lifting. To escape that F tier, we have to introduce friction, and that brings us to active recall. This is the process of deliberately retrieving information from your memory rather than just passively looking at it. Whether you use a trendy method like blurting, which is basically just reading a topic and doing a massive free recall brain dump onto a blank piece of paper, or if you're using digital flashcards, you are forcing the brain to do more work. Because your brain has to literally struggle to find the answer without a safety net, it builds much stronger retention. This active strain safely bumps these methods up to a solid B tier ranking.
Now, the crucial point here is that cued active recall is highly effective, but specifically for isolated facts. To put that into perspective, think about doctors in the medical field. When they are on the job, they have to instantly recall incredibly precise data, like common medications and their exact dosages. You can't guess that stuff. For this specific purpose, where high-stakes, discrete facts are needed at a moment's notice, flashcards are a fantastic fit. The cue on the front of the card perfectly matches the specific answer needed on the back, allowing medical professionals to do the exact mental heavy lifting required to lock in those life-saving details.
And doctors and students alike, really, supercharge this process using technology. Apps like Anki make these flashcards even more powerful by pairing them with a spacing algorithm. This takes advantage of a fascinating principle in learning science called the spacing effect. So instead of cramming, the algorithm tests you on a delay, pushing you to retrieve the information right as you are about to forget it. Waiting a while and reviewing it again? That significantly strengthens your retention over time.
But this brings us to a critical realization. Think about it. If flashcards are good enough for doctors memorizing life-saving medications, why are they only ranked as B tier for general learning? Well, the biggest flaw of flashcards and blurting is that they only test isolated, discrete facts. They do not force you to evaluate how one idea influences another. If your goal is to write complex essays, solve dynamic problems, or make nuanced decisions, recalling isolated facts simply isn't enough. You need to see the big picture.
Which leads us perfectly into Section 3, the schema building secret, connecting the dots.
Enter the biological secret to true learning, schema building. See, the human brain doesn't just store files in an isolated folder, it thinks in connections. True learning mastery comes from evaluating how important one idea is compared to another and organizing them into a cohesive whole. You're basically creating networks and connected bodies of information. When you understand how concepts influence each other, you aren't just memorizing. You are building a robust, flexible web of knowledge that you can actually use in the real world.
Let's look at how people try, and often fail, honestly, to build these schemas. Take the viral Cornell note-taking method. You divide your page, questions on the left, reference notes on the right, and a summary at the bottom. Now, the questions on the left are meant to create semantic priming, getting your brain ready to build schemas by making connections. and the bottom summary is like a mini evaluation of what's important. It acts as a great beginner stepping stone, which earns it a C tier. But its massive flaw? Most people do it completely wrong. Actually, scratch that. Almost everyone does it wrong. They ask superficial questions like, "What is this word?" just to fill out the column instead of deeply rearranging the ideas. Plus, looking at a neat, pretty page of notes gives you absolutely zero corrective feedback if your thinking is actually flawed.
All right, on to Section 4, S-Tier Study Techniques, the ultimate learning strategies.
These S-tier techniques are not magic bullets, okay? Mind mapping, the Feynman technique, and interleaving all have unique core mechanisms, but they physically require very strict, deliberate cognitive execution to reach that coveted S-tier status. If you just sort of go through the motions without actively changing how you think, they're going to drop down to a D tier instantly.
Let's start with mind mapping. When you are learning something deeply complicated, it is naturally going to feel confusing and overwhelming in your head. It just is. Mind mapping allows you to externalize all that messy thinking right onto paper. If you deliberately use it to evaluate connections, rank ideas, and visually organize how things fit together, it provides a massive stimulus for high-quality learning. Organizing your thoughts this way is literally like cleaning your house with all the lights on, rather than fumbling around with your eyes closed. You can actually see the disorganization and fix it.
Next up is the Feynman technique. The core principle here is to learn something complex, strip away all the confusing jargon, and force yourself to explain it simply to a complete beginner. This forces you to make hard decisions about what is truly important. However, it usually sits at an A tier because, well, if you are a beginner yourself, how do you know if your explanation is actually accurate? You don't. You lack feedback. But taking this complex knowledge and teaching it to an artificial intelligence prompt specifically designed to grade you, that elevates the whole shebang. Receiving that expert-level AI feedback exposes the exact gaps in your knowledge, securely bumping this technique right up into the S tier.
Finally, we have interleaving. The classical definition is just randomly swapping subjects in one study session, like studying math for 30 minutes, then biology for 30 minutes. That's good, maybe a B tier, because it keeps the brain guessing. But true S-tier interleaving is much deeper than that. It means taking two easily confused concepts within the exact same subject and testing them side by side. By forcing a direct comparison between similar ideas, your brain can clearly differentiate where one concept ends and the other begins. You are basically attacking your own knowledge from unfamiliar angles to ensure your schema is absolutely bulletproof.
So we have thrown out the comfortable highlighters, examined exactly how doctors use active recall for those life-saving dosages, and revealed the ultimate cognitive heavy lifters required for true mastery. Because true learning isn't supposed to be easy. It is supposed to be deliberate, connected, and strenuous. So, my final question to you is, are you going to keep wasting your time basking in the illusion of learning, or are you ready to pick up one of these S-tier techniques and start building real, unbreakable schemas today?